Welcome to the Love Beyond Limits podcast, where we celebrate love, intimacy, and everything in between. I am Ameenah Asante.
And I'm Kyla Black.
And together,
we'll explore the realms of relationships, sexuality, and queer experiences.
We're not putting this on the podcast. This is too much. 7 minutes. Like people, you don't want to watch us laugh for 7 minutes.
Hey, girlfriend.
Hey, girlfriend.
Oh, the giggles.
It's good to be back.
It is great to be back. Absolutely. Well, today is such a fun topic. We get to talk about who's the boy and who's the girl, which is definitely tongue-in-cheek. Just hilarious because we could care less about patriarchal BS like that. However, that is a common misconception in queer LGBTQ plus, relationships. So I figured we should talk about it.
I figure we should. Like you said, it's a very common misconception about queer relationships, particularly when the people in relationships are assumed to be two men or two women. And certainly for the non-queer community, for those who would ask such a question, I only wonder what they might ask now as people's gender expression increasingly is ever more fluid.
Totally.
Including non-binary. Then how are they going to even change this question?
Absolutely.
So, yes. Is this a question actually that you have ever been asked about you and a partner?
No, I have never been asked. And I would assume it is because everyone I have dated, I just had to go through the Rolodex.
Of course, the Rolodex. For those who don't know, this was an antiquated device that people used pre-digital time.
Yes, it's basically like going through your contacts. There we go.
Almost like a phone book where there's pages that you use a pen to write people's names and numbers down.
Hilarious. Yes, so everyone I've dated was pretty mass presenting, so more androgynous or tomboy-ish.
Mask presenting, again, for those who may not be familiar with the language, means masculine presenting.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Dr. Black.
Always.
Love. Yeah, do you want to start us off with your experience in these relationships? And I'll bring up the rear.
And you'll what? You'll be the caboose.
I shall be the caboose. I'm like sweating.
I promise we'll talk soon. I promise. Whew. Okay. The topic isn't funny. I don't know.
Oh my god, it's so hot in here.
This is gonna have to be so much editing. I'm sorry.
Or not.
Sorry and thank you.
I've been recording for 4.5 minutes. 4 minutes has just been laughing.
Oh my god. Thanks for sticking with us. That was an unexpected journey into uncontrollable laughter.
How long was that journey, Kyla?
It was probably close to 7 minutes, if not longer. I know. It's impressive.
Quite.
Okay, well, prior to that journey, you had asked a question.
What is your experience with different energies in your relationships?
Yes. Great question. I'm so glad you asked.
11
minutes later. So I have been in relationships with, I would say, very feminine, what, according to me in my eyes anyway, what I would categorize as feminine women I thought were very pretty and definitely previously had relationships with men, as had I, although that was high school really. But yeah, so feminine women. And then, yeah, I think there were really only one, maybe two folks who I was in relationship with who were more androgynous looking and mask presenting. You all know what that means now. You'll be quizzed later. Oh, that'd be fun. I'm gonna add a
Ooh, we
quiz
should
one
do
day.
quiz. Yeah,
Like a
totally.
vocabulary quiz or like a
Totally.
Mythbusters quiz. Okay. Yes, and then in my marriage, my wife fluctuated in how she felt about herself and in her expression, and she occupied, I would say, many spots along a spectrum of masculine and feminine energy, as did I. So, but I think I have been not, I can't specifically remember when, but I do feel I was asked this question at some point in relationship. And people came, the person or people came from a, like, I don't know, is this okay to ask? I've always been curious kind of thing. And I generally move through the world apparently open enough that people want to come to me and ask me questions. And asked this question, and I said, it's not really like that. I said, we're two women, period. So there's no boy and there's no man,
Yeah, totally.
right? Like, if that's the question, then the answer is it's non-answer
Yeah.
because it's two men or two women or two girls or two boys. And perhaps a better question is, how do you and your partner experience masculinity and femininity? And what kind of roles are both people occupying? And that's not a good word to use these days. What roles are you in? Do you embody? Do you enact with one another?
Yeah, good stuff. I think for me, it's been an interesting journey in queer life. I would say in two of my relationships of the five non-men, I would say that I was in more of a leading, take charge type of energy, and the other three maybe more in the kind of following and being led role. And for the most part, all of my experience of those was very natural. And I think in many ways, like I've always been this way, but I've also viewed life in this way where if you have two energies present in a space, will, assume a role and the other will assume equal but opposite role.
Like complementary role.
Complementary, perfect word. And so if that doesn't occur, it's really because two parties recognize that there's a conflict in energies. And either conflict arises or they just don't have any type of formative relationship. So it's quite natural.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting way to think about. My clinical brain is hearing what you're saying and thinking about conflict in couples, and
Yeah,
just even that as sort of a way of assessing couples compatibility and or looking at where conflict is occurring to, like there's lots of ways you can look at conflict in a relationship and understand it or where it comes from, but that as another potential source around how the energies are complementing one another and like kind of filling in the spaces, or are they clashing?
totally.
Yeah. And I don't need to go on about this next point too much, but I think it's important to say that fluctuating energies and masculine and feminine roles and such is really not exclusive to queer relationships,
Not at all.
right?
Not at
It's
all.
very common, in fact, to all relationships because we all actually embody both and all of the energies.
It's a spectrum.
And it gets pulled on and called on or quieted down depending on who we're with.
Yes, precisely. Yeah, it's a spectrum of energy, right? There's some people that truly occupy or present in this energy of like the divine masculine, if you will, right? Where it's command, take charge, leading, full of expression. And, the divine feminine would be different than that. And so it would be the receiving, being, allowing yourself to be supported, finding ways in which work for you in this give and take and this push pull. And so the feminine is always looking to flow like water versus direct like fire.
I'm sorry, ex-wife, if you're watching. So much I'm learning now. If only I had known then. I'm just
What's the
laughing.
epiphany?
What?
What's the epiphany?
Well, I'm listening to what you're saying as you're somewhat delineating characteristics or
Mm-hmm.
elements of the divine masculine and feminine. And it's not news to me that I have spent more time in relationship in the divine masculine energy, and not as in I was masculine in
Yeah.
whatever stereotypical way, but in the like just very much not flowing, not soft, not so much receiving, probably some aggressive approaches. Yeah, if I were to really go down a list, when the first time I think maybe with you that we had a more thorough conversation about divine feminine characteristics, I remember laughing. I was like,
Oh, that's that list.
how does one do that? How does airline do I need to get on to go fly to this land over here where one is receiving and soft and receiving support and receiving the things and all of it? And
Mm.
I think I have certainly, well, this is another conversation for another time or a psychoanalyst's couch if I ever get to one. But it makes me curious, at what point did that shift for me? And maybe it's a question for any of us who, I mean, most of us have, we can embody both sets of things, energies and characteristics, but depending on what our experiences were in life, it's going to determine which ones we have more access to and are more comfortable with, and like you said, are just more natural feeling in general. And I just think about my inner child, and she definitely wanted nothing but to receive love and support and validation and care and approval and acceptance and all these things. And yeah, and just at some point in the way, she hardened,
Yeah.
and was thinking about how that translated to energies in intimate relationships.
Yeah. It's interesting where you just went with that. I'm thinking about when I was younger on the playground, and the boys on the playground would be like playing sports or doing, certain things, and like the girls would like be occupying another space. And I remember my role that I assumed. I don't think anyone necessarily put me into this role, but like I was like the protector of the girls. It's like nobody's taking any shit from these stupid boys, and like have this like demeanor, and that traveled with me all the way to Japan. So, if regarding this relationship, what do you think, audience? What do you think our energy dynamic is? Okay, pause the video, think about what you've listened to, think about our general demeanor. And I don't know, no one likes to be wrong, but I would say if you're up to play the game, type it in the comments. Like, go ahead, pause, type in the comments what you think Ameenah is how do we want it phrased?
Yeah, exactly. That was going to be my question.
Just say like divine masculine, divine feminine. There we go. That's sweet. Okay, all right, done.
DM, DF.
DMDF. Not to be confused with the DTF.
I knew that would happen.
You knew it would, but I mean, you literally teed it up. You
I
teed
did.
it up.
I teed.
So now you're back. You've put and answered in the comments. What'd you land on? Okay, Kyla, you want to start us off?
Sure.
Which side of the spectrum would you say you occupy?
Well, I would say that this is the first relationship I've been in where I have truly accessed and stayed in my divine feminine.
Oh my god! Look at that.
And I think that I dress more androgynously than feminine. If one were to look at my closet, yeah. But that definitely, all of those foreign words that I first looked at on a list that I didn't really I understood in
Yeah.
some way. I now understand what it feels like to feel and to be in that space in a counterpart way.
Which means that I have accessed for the second time only and stayed consistently in more of a divine masculine role, which is super interesting because obviously I'm very femme presenting and I feel very womanly and I love being a woman and I love doing all of the girly things. However, in this
Not I.
relationship, However, in this relationship, I naturally take more of a divine masculine role in partnership.
Give us an example. What
An
does that really
example.
mean?
So I could be in the middle of downtown New York with my girl and powering through crowds, and I am leading the way. I have got my hand, I'm pulling her along, and like looking out, safety wise. I am enjoying making sure that we both are protected and feeling good and feeling safe. I find that together, when, in person in the moment, I make more decisions like impromptu, like this is what's happening, like this is what's next.
Do the in advance planning
Yes, she's the
decisions,
advanced
but in the
planner.
moment it's, I don't know, all done.
Yes, yes, yeah. What would be an example for you of what?
I mean, even with what you just described, I don't know that that would have been the example that would first come to my mind around
Hmm.
it. But given what you just described, I think the counterpart for me, what feels, and maybe I'm not defining it correctly, but I experience the complementary part of like letting myself be led
Totally.
and trusting. And not that trust is only for feminine or masculine or divine, what have you. Trust is clearly not a gendered assignment of anything.
Right.
But I think that for me personally, to lean into trusting you, to trusting a partner, it doesn't mean I didn't trust other partners. The particulars of this dynamic has me really allow myself to be led.
Yeah.
And not immediately. I think there was some,
Resistance, if you will.
if you will.
But not even resistance as in I don't, my experience is like, it wasn't that I don't want Ameenah to lead, it was how do I follow?
Does not compute.
Oh,
How do I not be in control of everything?
so just finding, I think we phrased it earlier on as like a softening.
It's just it continues to wow me. Just even that word and just the experience for so long of being quote unquote hard or hardened and armored, protected, all these synonyms around self protection, self preservation, and yeah, just
What do you think, what was the catalyst that allowed you to do that, to soften into your divine feminine?
I have to check my notes. Do you know?
So let me respond to it for myself, and maybe that will spark something in you.
Yeah.
Too cute. So for me, as I said, there was a previous relationship where I was trying this on and
What's this?
trying on, being in my more divine masculine that naturally wanted to come out in that relationship. And each interaction kind of varied on the spectrum. If 100 was divine masculine, well, let's make 100 divine feminine and 0 divine masculine. I would like toggle, right? Where I would be like more, more in the center, and I could never really like fully be in it. And I would say that what I understood was the reason why I couldn't is because the trust wasn't there. Like this, I could not trust that this particular individual would trust me and show up consistently in a way that allowed me to relax, that allowed me to take charge and to lead, even though that's what they wanted. And so, in this relationship, trust was found, pretty early on in a measurable week by week, month by month, way, in a natural progression in a relationship where I'm like, oh, okay, I can actually like lean back and like lean back further. And so that was really the biggest difference for me.
Yeah. Trust.
Page 87.
That's my answer. Yes, trust is very much what allowed the softening to occur. I'm thinking about early days of even that trust being developed because I think from the beginning there was, and my brain is now catapulting in many directions. It was low stakes in the
Yeah.
beginning, right? And so there was really a lot of freedom to just be before we started dating. And I think that when I genuinely started to experience you as being interested in me and asking me questions about myself and showing interest in my responses and encouraging more, and I started to experience the authentic self I am and who I know myself to be, but who had gotten just watered down maybe to some degree, or just didn't, thought that how I was just annoying or too much, or I don't know. I never thought that I was uninteresting, but I didn't always experience partners to be genuinely interested, or at least that's how I interpreted and perceived things, right? Because it's all through my own lens anyway.
Yeah.
So when I interpreted and perceived your genuine interest and found that I could share, and I was also interested conversely and reciprocally, that definitely started building the trust. And I think in that, and then sharing increasingly more vulnerable experiences, fears, worries, fuck ups, whatever, right? And you were just steady. And it's like, okay, so this is okay. Yeah. I also think that one of your gifts in life and to the world is the way that you are able to very effortlessly create a sense of safety for those around you. And yeah, and just that non-judgmental space to be who anyone is.
I appreciate that, darling.
Yeah.
Definitely important to me that people feel that way. So thank you for the reflection.
You're welcome.
So, are there words that we have for our listener about their journey, to tap more into divine masculine, divine feminine? I would start by saying that if you are led to allow yourself the freedom of exploration, to definitely do that. I think for me, had I not given myself the freedom of exploration, I would happily pigeonhole myself in the divine feminine constantly. Like, just seek out relationships where I was in this role and they were in that role. And as a result, I'd miss out on this whole other side of me that also comes very natural to me and feels very good, feels true. And as a result of this learning, I now know so much more of my depth. And I'm able to work with my own energy in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a similar invitation you extended in perhaps even our first episode, or perhaps it was the second, around for those who, like an invitation to dare to explore, right?
Yeah.
Around identifying one's own queerness or any-ness that hasn't been explored for whatever reasons it hasn't been explored.
Yeah.
And so whether it's in relationship or out of relationship or just in the universe in general, right? That have we all have all of these parts of us, and we can learn how to access them. And sometimes it means I can't access this part of me in this relationship. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean it's the wrong relationship. It just means that's not available in this context, in this dynamic, with these respective energies. So, depending on how long one's relationship is in that way, you may never know that you have this part of you, or
Right.
believe you don't, such as me.
Totally.
Also, and again, maybe another conversation. I think I do this toward the end of every one of our episodes.
She is the reason for part two every time, ladies and gentlemen.
My fault slash credit. Even just breaking down, because I think even when we talk about this, I've learned a lot from our conversations and beyond, but I still want to review it. I still don't feel confident about my understanding of the list, so to speak, of characteristics that are connected to divine masculine and divine feminine, even though I so much identified more once I saw them. But to give a list of them still feels like I'm not ready for the exam. Or maybe you could just review it right now before we close, or we can do it another time. What do you
No,
think?
I'm happy to talk about, many practitioners have created lists of, more masculine and feminine qualities, but more specifically divine masculine, divine feminine. As I think about these expressions, what comes up for me though is really around the divine feminine being an embodied experience, right? It's not something that gets put on. If anything, it's any things that get taken off and get put away because the divine feminine just is. So to look at a list is important right now in this moment so we can give you some information. And also, like, for anyone that's resonating with, oh, I would really love to tap in more to my divine feminine, look at what have you been trying to do versus what have you been allowing yourself to relax into or not do. And so I think that's a good place to start.
Great. That's a helpful question to think about, to guide one.
Yeah. So here are some qualities, and I won't read the whole list, but here are some qualities of healthy masculine. So it creates safety, witnesses without judgment, holds space, integrity and awareness, it guides, committed to truth, listens deeply. And then some healthy feminine, divine feminine traits. It's intuitive, trusts the self. It's loving, playful, fluid, heart-centered, surrenders, connecting, births, manifests, and creates. And it's vulnerable. And I think also important is to know what those things are not, right? So the divine masculine isn't aggressive, isn't cold and distant, or competitive or withdrawn, bullying, doesn't struggle to communicate needs, doesn't need to be right, it isn't reactive, it doesn't withdraw or run from love. And I think in this moment it's important to talk about, talking about mass presenting in a lot of this. And I think there's been a lot of challenges in some of the ways queer couples that involve two non-men, where one individual is more androgynous or mass presenting, but also playing this role of the masculine. And often, and particularly in the African American community, that can be really tricky. Like studs, ace individuals that at the end of the day, they're trying to find their place in this energy. And there can be a lot of characteristics that are picked up that are not true to the divine masculine. There might be, you know, stereotypical masculine.
Right, as projected onto us by patriarchy,
Totally.
essentially, in an extremely binary, limited fashion.
Absolutely. And so that's very much a challenge sometimes for folks to deal with. And the invitation, if you have not received it, is to not follow that and just like reject that shit. Because it's old and it's unnecessary, and in some ways it's harmful. And divine feminine is not off, or the feminine is not off the hook, right? There are definitely some characteristics that get taken on by the wounded feminine, if you will, that really challenge how, you know, how they're perceived. So here's a couple of those. So it can be desperate or needy, irrational, manipulative, insecure, and seeking external validation, chasing love, inauthentic, victim behavior, people pleasing is a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, lack of boundary is also a big one.
Yeah. And to reiterate, these are not, even as you were saying that list, I'm having a vision of, let's say, women, asterisk, hearing that list and seeing themselves in it or applying it to females. And just, again, just reiterating that that is around the feminine energy,
Yes.
right? And so all peoples, regardless of gender identity, of chromosomes and genitals and all the things, these are energies that we can experience, right? In the wounded or in the healthy, of our masculine and feminine energies.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been great. Perhaps there'll be a part two around energy. And I'm feeling complete for now. How are you feeling, Dr. Black?
I am also feeling complete. I think that a part two will likely occur in some fashion, although I think that it won't necessarily need to be specifically around divine feminine and masculine, but it has me just think about parts, how we are all made up of many parts. And over time, the more you learn about yourself, the more one can learn who all is within us and what are our parts and who shows up in the relationship. And so, it's its own conversation, but it's kind of an offshoot of what we started chatting about today.
We love parts. Parts is a fun topic for us.
I love your parts, Ameenah.
I love your parts, Kyla. Amazing. All right. This has been fun, girlfriend.
This has been fun, girlfriend.
See you soon.
See you. Wait. No, it's so much space. I need to get this down. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Love Beyond Limits podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, please feel free to subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes.
Be sure to follow us and join us next time.
I might you. And I have to pay.
Okay, we gotta do it. We gotta do it. Be sure to follow us and join us next time as we continue to break boundaries and celebrate love in all its forms.